The drone buzzed somewhere high above the ice-rimmed expanse of Fort Bridger, but I couldn't hear it. Too much wind, too much distance. Still, I could feel it, watching, an old instinct. I stood by the fuel depot, breath fogging the air, watching the sky turn violet with evening. I wasn't hiding. I was just there, motionless, wrapped in my regulation jacket, listening to the steel groan of storage tanks in the cold. A voice crackled faint on comms. Not ours. We're hunting Spectre 6. Confirm visual or audio signature. I closed my eyes at the name, let it pass through me like weather. I was supposed to be dead. The world, the part of it that mattered, believed it. The drone's thermal optics tagged me. Potential Spectre 6. Confirmed. Somewhere far from here. Another continent, another war. A commander spat curses through static. Impossible. She died at Black Hollow. I read the reports myself. They always read the reports. They never knew the truth. Back at Fort Bridger, in the warmth of the ops center, I knew someone was watching the same feed. Young probably. Green around the eyes. Curious enough to ask. And he did. A lieutenant, voice sharp over the hum of electronics. What the hell is Spectre 6? No one answered him. Because no one knew. Not really. To them I was just Caroline Pike. Logistics clerk. Badge number stitched with perfect threads. 38 years old. Competent with a clipboard. The woman who made sure the right boots went to the right squads. Invisible in all the ways that mattered. But to the men abroad, the ones whose hands broke nations, I was the shadow they never caught. A ghost that refused to stay buried. Their ghost. Not Bridger's. And so I stood by the depot, snow up to my ankles, hands in pockets, waiting. Waiting, I told myself, for the cold to settle. But truth was colder still. I was waiting to be remembered. The mop water burned through the skin on my knuckles. I watched the gray streaks smear across the motor pool floor. Each pass erasing a little more of myself. Punishment, they called it. I hadn't raised my voice. Just a word just under my breath. But it was enough. Private Roy Keller had tossed the insult my way that morning. Loud enough for his buddies to hear. For the whole damned row of engines to echo it back. Oh look, Supply Barbie trying to act tough. I don't know why I said anything. Maybe because his laugh grated. Maybe because I remembered worse men who said worse things and never paid for it. I muttered something back. I don't even remember the words. Just low enough to show I was still breathing. That was my mistake. Keller grinned. The staff sergeant heard. She didn't ask questions. Didn't care. Just barked the order. On your knees, Pike. Scrub it clean. So I did. I worked in silence, the suds eating at my hands, the stink of diesel heavy in my nose. The young ones passed by, some sneering, some pretending I wasn't there. Their boots clicked on the concrete, sharp little reminders of rank, youth and unearned arrogance. They saw my pressed uniform, still crisp, my hair tied back in neat braids even as I scrubbed the floor like a maid. They mistook the quiet for surrender. No one saw the fist I made under the mop water. The sting of old scar tissue along my palm. An old burn hidden beneath duty gloves for years. They didn't know what I carried. What I buried. When my shift ended, I didn't go to the mess. I walked instead to the north perimeter, past the barracks, past the lights, until the wind bit deep and the world narrowed to white. There I watched the ridgeline. Snowfields stretched like bone under moonlight. Cold, clean, honest. I used to sleep in this kind of cold. 38 now, but I still remembered the deep frost, the numbness in the tips of fingers even under tactical gloves. I remembered the way your breath froze on your rifle, the way silence wrapped everything after a kill. Operation Hallowgate. I hadn't said that name aloud in a decade. Not since I walked out of Black Hollow alive when I shouldn't have. I was the one who gave the green light to move. I overruled my gut. My second, Grant Mercer, insisted the intel was solid. He said we could breach, secure the target, extract before dawn. We didn't. It was a slaughter. Fox platoon, my command, reduced to bodies left in the ice. Men and women I trained, eaten with, watched fall in love in secret corners of the base. Dead because I chose to trust Mercer. I walked out. Not untouched, but breathing. Mercer walked out untouched in a different way, shielded, protected. He spun the report, pinned it on me, on poor intel, on complications beyond operational control. Then he climbed the ladder hand over hand, rung by rung. Now he sat at the Pentagon, the sharpest strategist of his generation. Revered. His face framed in Fort Bridger's war room, smirking down from polished glass. Every time I passed that portrait, my gut twisted. I could have said something. Could have screamed. Written the letter. But who listens to ghosts? So I did what ghosts do. I stayed invisible. But when the lights were out, when the snow came and the camp grew still, I remembered every name, every scream, everyone I left behind. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mercer's grin. I didn't hate Keller for his stupid joke. He didn't know. He was just another kid who thought supply clerks were soft. I didn't care about his snickers. But the past has weight. And sometimes all it takes is a careless word to make the dead shift in your mind. That night, I stayed by the wire until my joints ached. The cold kept me awake, but it was memory that kept me standing. And then the radio started to chatter. Soft at first, then sharper. Voices strained. A patrol caught in a wideout pinned near Raven Bluff. No radio signal steady, just flashes of words. Snipers, storm closing coordinates. Someone else's problem, I told myself. I wasn't on call. I wasn't anything. But my boots were already moving before the chatter cut out. I didn't even bother with permission. I wasn't going to get it. I packed light rifle, spare mags, blades. I left my badge in my bunk. And I walked into the storm. The snow came sideways, slicing, tearing. Visibility a bastard's joke, 5 feet, then nothing. The wind stripped sound from the air. But I knew how to move in it. I remembered Hallowgate. After 2 hours of blind movement, I found them. Bodies splayed, half covered in frost. Some still breathing, most not. The snow was red in patches, steaming faintly. I didn't flinch. Keller was there. His uniform soaked. A dark blossom of blood at his abdomen. Eyes glassy, breath shallow. He turned his head when I crouched. "Help, help," he rasped. Beyond us, shadows moved. Enemy. I heard them through the howl, foreign tongue, sharp consonants, familiar cadence. Then a voice, low but clear, somewhere in the dark. "She's here. Spectre 6. Another voice, weaker, wet with blood. "We killed her. How is she alive?" They were right to ask. I raised my rifle and made them regret the question. One by one in the snow, I pulled their lives from them. Quietly, efficiently. No flair, no mercy. By the time the last one fell, Keller was staring at me through tears of blood and wind. He tried to speak. "You who?" I knelt, my face close to his ear. "You move when I say. Not before." He didn't understand. But he obeyed. Because the dead had taught me how to make the living listen. I dragged Keller by the collar, his boots scraping ruts through the ice. He moaned, half conscious, but he stayed upright when I told him to. He knew better than to disobey that voice. The others I left marked. Flares jammed in the snow beside each wounded man. I didn't have the strength to haul them all back, but I made sure they'd be seen when the skies cleared. By the time the rescue chopper cut through the wideout, I dragged Keller halfway to the bluff line. His blood stained my sleeves, dark and sticky. My breath came in short, quiet bursts, not from exertion, from remembering, because the night smelled like Hallowgate. I didn't wait for the medics. As soon as the floodlights swept us, I let Keller's body fall into their arms and vanished back into the storm. The next morning they found me at my bunk. Clean uniform, hands scrubbed raw. My badge stitched proper on my chest. A ghost pretending to be solid again. But ghosts leave footprints. I was summoned that afternoon to the command building, a low concrete structure with frost lacing the windows, heaters barely keeping the corridors above freezing. Inside, the walls carried the usual symbols of power, maps, portraits, flags draped neatly in corners. And there, above the central conference room door, hung the framed photo of Grant Mercer, the Pentagon darling, the man whose betrayal cost Fox platoon their lives. I stared at that face, that perfect smugness frozen in glass, until the duty officer cleared his throat and gestured me in. Colonel Abe Cutter sat at the head of the table. A hard man with a face like carved oak, his gaze heavy and cold. A few other officers stood nearby, pretending not to watch me too closely. I stood at attention. Didn't salute. Just stood. Cutter's eyes didn't leave me. "Commander Caroline Pike," he said. My title caught in my ears. I hadn't heard it in years. Not here. Not since Hallowgate. You were presumed dead. I said nothing. Spectre 6, he added. Fox platoon. The room went still. Then Cutter dropped a file on the table with a heavy slap. The folder was thick, its red seal recently broken. Intel just cleared declassification, he said, voice low. Took years. Too many years. I didn't reach for the file. I didn't need to. I already knew. But Cutter's voice didn't waver. Grant Mercer sold your team out. He brokered your location to the enemy for leverage, political currency for a power shift we didn't see coming. The words hung there, cold as the Wyoming air outside. Cutter kept talking, but I didn't hear most of it. My mind had gone somewhere else, back to the ice, back to the last breath of my sergeant, the way he called my name when the mortars fell, the way his eyes widened in the end. I didn't move. My hands stayed at my sides. My heart didn't race. My knees didn't shake. But my eyes, they must have changed because Cutter stopped mid-sentence. He looked at me for a long, grim second. Orders, ma'am? One of the junior officers asked, half-joking, as if unsure whether to treat me as living or dead. I spoke for the first time. Where's Keller? Silence. He's in medical, Cutter said. But he's stable. He asked for you. I nodded once. I didn't ask for anything else. I didn't need apologies, didn't want recognition. I just walked out, my boots loud on the tile. The air outside bit sharper. The wind carried the sting of the bluffs. But inside me something heavier stirred. The weight of a file unopened. I didn't need to read it. I already knew how it ended. Mercer lived. My people didn't. And I was done being dead. The infirmary at Bridger wasn't much. Rows of cots, battered cabinets, the smell of antiseptic covering rot beneath the walls. I found Keller behind a curtain, pale under thin sheets. His torso bandaged tight, his eyes sunken but sharp enough now to hold recognition. When he saw me, he tried to sit up, winced, failed. I stood at his bedside, hands behind my back. Ma'am, he whispered. His voice carried more than pain. He wasn't calling me Pike anymore. Or Supply Barbie. I said nothing. Just watched his eyes. You were there, he croaked. In the storm. I nodded. They said you weren't cleared for field. I waited. They said you're not supposed to be able to fight like that. I leaned forward, voice low. Don't listen to what they say. He swallowed hard, guilt swimming just beneath his breath. I didn't know, he muttered. What you were. Who you. You didn't need to. I let that sit. He looked like he wanted to say more. But his throat worked, no words coming. When I turned to leave, he croaked louder. What are you? I paused, glanced back. Fox, I said quietly. Last of. I left him with that. The next morning I walked into the mess hall. No fanfare. No announcement. But someone, I still don't know who, had left something on my usual seat. A black patch, rough-stitched, edges frayed but whole. The emblem. A fox head, sharp-eyed, mouth slightly open like it was ready to bite. Below it, Spectre 6. I stood there staring at it for a beat too long. Conversations in the mess had softened, eyes turning without trying to be obvious. I picked it up, pocketed it, and sat. A minute passed before Keller appeared, bandaged, moving gingerly, his arm in a sling. He stood across from me, not sitting. A hush rippled in his wake, soldiers watching him, watching me. Ma'am, he said, voice more steady. Some of us want to learn. I raised an eyebrow. Not drills, he clarified. Not the shit they teach in handbooks. The real fight. I looked up at him, this kid who sneered at me not 2 days before. Pack light, I said. 0600. His lips twitched into something like respect. He nodded once, stepped back. Others watched him. Then me. By dawn, a line waited by the southern gate of Bridger. Half a dozen soldiers at first. Then more. None ordered. All volunteers. I said little. Just inspected their gear. Boots, weapons, breath too fast in the morning dark. We set off before the sun. Snow crunching beneath us, the wind biting our cheeks. We didn't march like a unit. We moved like people hunting or being hunted. Somewhere across the snowfields, beyond the ridgelines and valleys, enemy comms lit up. Spectre 6. Confirmed active. Priority elimination. Maximum. They thought I was coming alone. They didn't realize I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was an army. We moved fast but quiet, boots pressed deep into the frost, breath pulled in and kept low. I taught them not by lecture but by rhythm. How to place your foot when the wind's high. When to step on crust, when to sink into the soft. I didn't speak unless I needed to. Words burn energy. Silence makes you sharper. By the second day they stopped asking why. They just followed. I learned their names without asking. Keller, of course, keeping pace despite his bandaged side. Then two sisters, Bryn and Marla, sharpshooters both. Hale, a medic with eyes that never closed fully. And Tate, a wiry kid with a voice like a snapped twig but a steady rifle. We crossed valleys Bridger maps didn't bother marking. I knew these hollows from long ago, years when I wasn't a clerk but something worse. Something sharper. Fox country they used to call it. Terrain so cold and mean only the dead knew its shortcuts. On the fourth day, just past a line of ice-clad pines, we found the remnants of the patrol Bridger thought they'd lost. 3 bodies half frozen into the ground, eyes wide, mouths open. They died hard. But it wasn't the deaths that told me the truth. It was the marks on the snow, disciplined, circular, too clean for an accident. They'd been bait. I made my team set up a perimeter. Low to the ground, no fires, no light. Then I waited. Night came fast in that corner of the frontier. No stars, just cold wind and the sound of the snow shifting. Not from weather. From boots. I counted 3 shapes moving low, sweeping in like wolves. 4 in uniforms, but their breath was loud in the hush. I raised a hand, signaling stillness to the team. One of the shadows came too close. I let him. He was checking for signs of heat. When he stepped within reach, I pulled him down into the snow. My blade slipped through his throat before he could utter a sound. His eyes bulged. His hands reached for a rifle that wouldn't save him. The other 2 heard the scuffle and came running. Keller fired first. The shot rang louder than I wanted, but clean through one man's temple. The third turn tried to run. Marla picked him off mid-stride, her round catching him high in the back. Then silence. We searched the bodies. Rank insignias I recognized, mercenaries, paid hands from across the sea. Well-trained, well-equipped. And one of them had a radio. Still hot. I thumbed the button. A crackle, then a voice on the other end. Report. Visual on Spectre? I didn't answer. Just held the line, breathing slow. Then the voice muttered, almost to itself. Impossible. She died at Black Hollow. I stared into the dark, radio in hand. I whispered low into the mic. Black Hollow was just my first death. A beat of silence. Then static, loud, frantic chatter in another tongue. We burned their bodies before we moved on. That night, around the coals, Keller finally asked, "Why do they call you Spectre 6? I didn't answer for a while. The flames flickered, casting their faces in red. Finally I said, "Because 5 times before I should have died." Their eyes stayed on me, but I looked to the dark again. And because no one likes the number 7, they didn't ask again. We kept moving. Word traveled faster than winter. By the time we crossed back toward Bridger's outer lines, every enemy comms channel had lit up. Spectre 6 active. Operational. Moving west. They called in assets, bounties, specialists. They spoke my name in the dark like an old curse. My team heard the intercepts through Keller's cracked radio. They didn't say it aloud, but I saw it in their faces. They hadn't signed up for ghosts and myths. But they didn't leave. Not when the enemy came. The ambush hit us at the Black Ridge crossing. 8 men, faces masked, rifles tight in their grip, disciplined, quiet. Not militia. Professionals. The fight was brutal, over fast. I moved first. The shadows parted and I was already in them, blade catching the throat of the point man. Keller flanked with me. His wound reopened, but he kept firing, sharp and precise. Bryn and Marla split high ground, dropping bodies as they surfaced. One of them, the last one, tried to run. I caught him at the ridge crest. Threw him to the snow, jammed my knee into his chest. He spat curses in his tongue until I pressed his face into the ice. "Who sent you?" I asked. His teeth rattled. But he laughed, bloody and broken. "They all want you dead, Spectre," he sneered. "But one wants you first." "Who?" He laughed again. "You already know." I snapped his neck. We burned them too. That night, Keller sat across from me, holding his side, blood seeping through his dressing. Who's coming after us, ma'am? I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because I'd seen it in the eyes of that dying man. I'd known it since the file slammed down on Cutter's desk. Mercer. I could see him now, not just a photo in a frame but the man behind the curtain. The one who brokered my people for power. The one who made Spectre 6 a ghost and walked free. He wasn't content knowing I was alive. He needed me dead, truly finally, to stay clean. But I wasn't going to give him that. By the time we marched back into Fort Bridger, the snow clinging to our boots, we weren't ghosts. We weren't supply clerks or medics or riflemen. We were something else. I walked through the mess hall doors, my team behind me, boots scuffing, tired and slow. And at my usual seat, there it was again. The black patch. Fox platoon. Spectre 6. I picked it up, held it between two fingers. This time I stitched it to my sleeve right there in the mess. Needle biting the fabric slow and sure. They watched me in silence. When I stood, Keller straightened beside me. "Ma'am," he said, voice clearer than ever. "Some of us want to learn. If you'll teach us." I looked them over. This ragged, bloodied, half-trained cluster of youth and grit. 0600, I said. "Pack light." I let the silence answer the rest. We left Fort Bridger that morning. No ceremony, no speech. Just the sound of boots and rifles clicking into place. Soldiers, yes, but something older too. Something colder. Fox platoon marched again. And somewhere far away, Mercer's contacts whispered into his ear. Spectre 6 confirmed active. Elimination priority. Maximum. Mercer didn't smile. He didn't need to. He just whispered, "Bring her to me." We weren't coming back to Bridger soon. We weren't meant to.